Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Red Hot Talk. We got Red Lawton back again. Yay! So it's very good to see him healthy. Yeah, absolutely. And so just do a little bit of a friendly notice that Rod's internet connection, or maybe my internet connection, is a little bit iffy today. So hopefully we don't have any disconnections or frozen screen. But if we do, please bear with us, and we'll try to reconnect or somehow try to restart. It's something that's completely out of our hands. If it's internet connection, there's nothing really we can do. Anyway, so say hi to everybody. And so you've seen the title. We're going to talk a little bit about street photography. So we're going to jump right into it. So I'm pretty sure this is something that everyone who has a camera would have done something on the street, one way or the other. Even if you're just new, sooner or later we're going to dabble into street photography, because we are walking on the street every day, right? If you have a camera with you, you will take some photos, right? So we're gonna have a general conversation about street photography, and perhaps maybe we even talking about how we can improve ourselves as a street photographer, how to take better street photos that actually mean something, or maybe have some sort of artistic appeal to your photography. So let's start off with Rod, and let's ask you a quick question. Rod, I mean, you use camera for many years, and if simple asking you, what type of camera would you think, or would you prefer to use for general street photography?
Well, so first of all, what are we all talking about with street photography? I don't take a lot of candid shots of people. I take street photographs in a broader sense, things on the street. So it could be signs, it could be people, it could be anything. So I don't actually set out to take pictures of people. That makes me feel just a little bit uncomfortable. So I may not be a street photographer in the same way that other people are, but if I'm going to take that sort of shot out in the street of just stuff going on, I'd prefer something small and unobtrusive. I probably wouldn't use the viewfinder. I'd probably use the screen. My usual thing is to find somewhere to stand and sit and wait for stuff to come past me.
Okay.
And shoot that way. So anything unobtrusive suits me best, because nobody wants to stand out, do they?
So we're definitely going to pick your brain in a minute, because you mentioned a couple of keywords there, like unobtrusive. There's a very big word there. Yeah. Being discreet is another big word there. And I think one most interesting thing that you just said just now was that you said and observe. And that's the key. So this I'm going to come back to in a minute. So just before I move on to mine, just to talk a little bit about my tools, and I would like to ask everybody who's listening right now, what is your favorite street cameras that you like to use, and or what sort of setup do you like to use? Just like more like a compact cameras with a fixed lens, or you do use interchangeable cameras, mirrorless cameras, DSLRs, rangefinders, whatnot, anything. It's just a fun discussion here to see what everybody else uses, because I can see already quite a big list of cameras already pop up on the screen, so that's quite interesting. So let's talk a little bit about me. I mean, I started my photography journey as a travel photographer. So that's kind of like my start before I move into people and portraits and things like that. And I think that for people who may have listened to our discussion for the last few months, you may have heard that I said that I used to write blogs, travel blogs. So I used to take my cameras with me wherever I travel and take lots and lots of photos. So back then my setup was pretty simple. It would just be an SLR or DSLR at the time, and I used 24-70, one zoom lens, one camera. For me at the time, there weren't that many options in terms of digital photography. In the early days, there was no digital GR. There was no Leica existed. They had the M8, but the M8 was extremely expensive, and the lenses were extortion. I mean, I had a film Leica, but I couldn't make the transition to digital because they were just crazy money. But anyway, let's stick with the point that I used DSLR for the first 6-7 years before I got into more of a street photography thing, because I find it's quite a good. As Robin's in the house already. It's quite a good shutter therapy, where we just go out and just have a little bit of a lone moments there. And like you, Rod, I like to observe, so I like to sit in the corner, and just to see exactly what's going on around me or in front of me. But I do choose my location, obviously, if I want to take something slightly more serious, slightly more artistic, and I'll usually look for the light, look for the textures, in terms of buildings or surroundings or any trees or anything that will enhance the aesthetic appeal of the photograph. Then I'll just sit and wait, just like you, just sit and wait to see if there's anything happen. So my tool back in the days, first tool that I used was DSLR, and then I learned about Micro Four Thirds, and Micro Four Thirds was pretty good because it's quite small. So I loved using my EM5 at the time with the first one, and then the second one, because it's tiny. And especially the first one, I think many of you may agree, if many of you already use a Micro Four Thirds or any sort of digital camera, which doesn't have a flippy screen. One of those that just tilt up. And I like to shoot waist down. That's kind of my style shooting, and so I tend to do that a lot with my EM5 Mark 1, the very first one, because Mark 2 they already have a flip out screen, and so I still do that, but it's just a little bit more awkward because you have to flip the whole thing out and turn it up 90 degrees. It's just a little bit more bulky in the sense that it's flip outward rather than just flip up. From the camera. So the EM5 actually was my main camera. Then I moved on to Pen F. I think that was kind of still, Pen F is still kind of my street thing. And if I just go out, because I, like you said again, a bit discreet, a little bit more unobtrusive, because it's quite small and compact. Especially I got a black Pen F, so it's black, it's quite stealthy. And I need just a couple of small primes and I'm done. So that's my setup. That's my setup. Even today, I still use that setup a lot when I go out and about. So let's maybe we'll move on to a little bit of audience. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to show you some photographs in a minute. To then we can discuss about general street photography, how you feel about it, and whether we can improve as a collective. How can we make ourselves better as a street photographer? So let's look at some of the comments here to see anyone has any very interesting camera that I would like to quote. Wow, we got RB here. Just bring out your comment. You got Leica M, Nikon ZF, Fujifilm X Pro 3, and then Ricoh GR. I hope you're not taking all four cameras out at the same time. Just one at a time, right? But out of these four, I wonder which one is your favorite one. I'm talking about just one camera at any one time. Just if you only have one choice, just take one camera out. Which one would that be? I would just like to hear from you. And also, Eric's another one, got the GR. GR seems to be a very popular option. Rod, have you handled a GR before? A GR digital?
Not the latest one. I've used a couple of older GRs. I've used there's GR with quite a small sensor.
Right.
Did it have a zoom? I can't remember. But I've used the APS-C one of the early models.
Right.
And it's the Nikon Coolpix A, which is not dissimilar.
Yep.
The thing, I think they're great, but I think they're a tilting screen.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like to use. Yeah, a lot of people like to use GR because you got the snap focus features, right? It's basically zone focus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That is a very cool thing. I do appreciate that. I think for me, if I want to be unobtrusive, I'd rather use a rear screen, ideally a flip-up screen. My Pen EP7 suits me very well because the touch focus and touch shutter just are very quick and very simple.
Right.
And it's just a very unobtrusive camera to use. But I think, like you, I'm interested in travel photography. That is what I spend a lot of time doing. And that's a mix. So that's a mixture. Sometimes you see a bit of architecture. Sometimes you see some scenery, some street furniture, a vehicle, a shop display. Sometimes you see a shot and you think that needs somebody in it. So that's when you have to run on ahead, find someone to stand and wait for people to be where you want them to be.
Yeah.
So in all of these cases, I think if the other thing is if you're taking pictures in public buildings, landmarks, interiors, it's better to have an intrusive camera that you don't put to your eye, because if you're very obviously a photographer, it's not long before somebody from security comes along and says, "If you've got a permit,
Yeah.
can you leave now, please?" Or just basically you might get a bit of harassment depending on where you are. So,
Yeah.
for example, a couple of years back, I did some photography at the British Museum in London. Not the British Museum. Where am I? That place with the hexagonal roof. You know, the glass roof.
Oh,
It is a British Museum, isn't it?
That's the British Museum, the dome. Yeah, the dome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
With the
British
glass
Museum.
roof.
Yeah, British Museum.
That's why I thought yes. So,
Yeah.
so everything was fine till my colleague got a tripod out, and suddenly out we went.
Yeah.
You can't use that here. Go away. So I think there's a lot to be said if you're photographing famous places for being discreet.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
guess
a camera that
yeah, especially these days, it's quite tricky, right? In not just London, but around the world. I mean, I found that if you take a tripod out and people start having weird eyes on you, especially securities and police, and they will start asking questions.
Yeah.
And what exactly are you doing? And if you pull like a big lens, they will ask again. You know, what are you photographing exactly? You know, like, what are you pointing your camera to? It's got all these little things here, and that's why I think smaller system probably work best, right?
Excuse me. I think the other thing is that certainly in London and in a lot of cities, they don't seem to be so hot on it these days. But a few years back, a lot of companies were very hot on property rights.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So that if you're photographing on private property, they felt entitled to insist on you having permission to film or photograph there, and actually having to pay a fee.
Yeah.
For property rights. You don't hear so much about them now, but I know a few years back I had colleagues who tried to do a lot of photography in Canary Wharf in London, which is like a private commercial area. Yes. And if you're at all obvious about doing that, you'll be sent packing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've done a commercial shoot for my client at Canary Wharf, and I remember.
All right.
The security was very fast, extremely fast. You know, my clients wanted me to document them buying the engagement ring in the what was that jewelry place? Tiffany in Canary Wharf. So obviously, I have to photograph, the outside, the shop and everything, and being a very expensive high-end jewelry shop, and you can expect a lot of CCTV, a lot of security will be around the area. So I was outside. As soon as I wasn't even like doing anything special, I just basically have my shoulder bags, quite small setup, and I was using my Leica at the time. I just simply pulled my camera out. I haven't even pressed the shutter yet, and there was already 3 security guards in front of me, asking exactly what you're doing, and obviously the Tiffany manager was actually standing at the door, so she quickly explained, my client's inside, he's the photographer, he wants to document the whole process of buying things here, and then that I can see exactly what you mean there. It can be a little bit annoying in a way.
I used to do some tutorial videos for a photo magazine. We had to get filming permissions wherever we filmed. And one day we were filming the Holborn Museum in Bath. Yep. And the idea was that I'd be filming down Great Pony Street in Bath, which is like quite a striking, wide Georgian street.
Yeah.
And everything was fine until I turned the camera and they said, you can't photograph that. I said, I've got permission. They said, you're filming the wrong way. You've got permission to film the building. You've not got permission to film from our property in a different direction. So it all got horribly messy. So if you're at all obvious about what you're doing, you do need to get permissions, or you end up in a mess.
Yeah, well, I couldn't imagine. And this is why, I mean, I got Jeff here. Jeff got a very good camera actually for street, and that is RX100. I mean, I actually think it's quite a nippy little camera that is quite capable. Obviously, you can't compare to in terms of image quality, even though you really get into very technical and low light stuff. But it overall, I mean, it's a very decent 1-inch sensor that is capable of getting some really good results. I took the same camera to Spain a few years back now to do some not really street. I was actually a wedding guest, so I'll just basically be there for a wedding. But while I was there and being a guest, I don't want to carry a big camera, so I just want a really tiny thing. So I have the RX100, so just have a little compact point and shoot. And but I was doing a lot of photography before and after the wedding, so and then they all turned out great. In fact, quite decent as well. I mean, I got a couple of them printed, so it's actually not a bad camera to do, something a relatively simple street photography. And yeah, I think that's a very good choice, to be honest. And I mean, I know that that's arguable. GI is better because it's got bigger sensors and things. But then again, the RX100 has a zoom, so you've got a little bit of flexibility there that you can do a little bit of punching, a little bit of detail, and it has macro mode, so you can do a little bit of close up as well. And yeah, it overall is okay. The only thing I would complain about a camera is that battery life is really horrible, and it doesn't really last long at all.
I find them quite small to use as well. The RX100s, I know that they've been very popular. They're just a little small and fiddly for my taste, but
Well, I mean, you think about small, that EVF is tiny, isn't it? That EVF is not even an EVF; it's just almost like a little microscope.
Yeah. So Peter Hurley asked a question: am I right in thinking that the Eiffel Tower is copyrighted? Certainly, the light show was.
The light show, yeah.
So you couldn't film or photograph the lights. The thing is, if it's obvious you're doing it and you're stopped, I think they can prevent you from doing it. If you just act like a tourist, they can't stop tourists just using phones or snapping stuff. So I think as long as you're not obvious about it, as long as you're not obviously a commercial photographer, then I think you can get away with a lot more. And honestly, I think you ought to be able to photograph the Eiffel Tower's lights because it's a thing, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, I've seen enough videos, like wedding videos and proposal videos that has the lit up Eiffel Towers in the back. I'm pretty certain none of them got any permissions. They were shooting a little bit further away, but so they can capture the whole tower. But I'm pretty certain that they didn't do that.
I think as well, the advantage of a flip up screen is that first of all, the minute you put a camera to your eye, then you're suddenly obviously a photographer. If you just got a camera at waist level, fiddling around with stuff on the screen, you could be looking at pictures you've taken, you could be doing stuff with the menus, even if it's apparent that you're taking a picture. It's not as confrontational as you're having a camera to your eye, looking somebody straight on.
Yeah. So and, I'd like to hear from any of the audience listening as well, and or watching us at the moment. Have you encountered any similar experiences where you get stopped or questioned by security or police, or being asked to put away your camera because you're photographing something that you shouldn't? We'd like to hear from you because it's interesting to share that information out as well. Because I certainly get stopped a few times in London, especially near Tower Bridge areas, and that's quite a common place to get stopped by security. Even though you haven't done anything wrong, even though you're by yourself, doing things for yourself, they can still ask you. As soon as they pull a big massive camera out, and they're gonna stop you, and but you haven't done anything wrong. I mean, my suggestion would be just to talk to them nicely, because they will always threaten you straight away. It is illegal to photograph here. What is illegal? We haven't broken the law. There's no sign anywhere saying that it's no photograph here, and people using phones and other cameras, just because they're a little bit smaller and they can get away with it, and I can't, just because you use slightly bigger lenses and things like that. So what they're saying is completely nonsense. So you just have to kind of be friendly with them and try to make friends with them. Yeah.
I think as well, it's the difference between a criminal offence and I don't know what you might call it, a civil offence. I mean, if you're taking pictures on private property, that doesn't seem to me to be a terrible thing. if you've done it inadvertently or you're just a tourist. If you're a burglar casing a joint and working out where the windows are, then that's different. But I think they are very security conscious around these places. I'm not sure. I suppose some of the time as well, they're protecting the commercial property rights, so that I think, again, you don't hear so much about it now, but a few years back when I was shooting a lot more video, the National Trust in the UK was a nightmare because they insisted on full property rights on every rendition of every property they own. So technically, if you take a photograph of one of their country houses, then A, you should have had permission, and B, you should be paying for a license to reproduce an image of their property. Nobody ever bothers with that, and I think they've kind of given up. But it's just the mood of the times, and that kind of thing can still happen.
Yeah. And let's see if anybody else has got any comment. But I can see already quite a few common cameras that people like to use is the EM5. Quite a few like the EM5, the OM5. I think it's because of the size, especially when you pair with some of the 1.8 prime lenses. They are extremely small, and literally people think that you're tourist cameras. It's nothing serious, and as the retro look does help as well. People might think it's a film camera, so they don't really bother coming over to you, so that's a good thing. Let's see if has anyone got into trouble. Never system natural, never been stopped by any security. Right, that's good. Jam, I got stopped by taking photograph in Somerset. Somerset House, right. And I've been kicked out of the market in East London for taking pictures. Oh, that's interesting.
You don't want to mess with some. You don't want to mess with some of those market traders. They're a pretty tough bunch.
Yes, definitely. And Robert as well. Only ever been stopped in the in Barbican, right? Barbican, yeah, I know. Barbican can be a little bit strict as well. Okay, it's perfect legal to film in public, but certainly not in private buildings. That's the problem, right? We have a lot of private buildings around these days, and exactly, where the boundary is, we don't know. And to be quite honest, that's the argument I always talk to the security guard. If you're saying that I can't photograph or film here, you should put a sign up. That's noticeable by everybody who walk past your boundary, so we know exactly when to stop. If you don't have it, how do I know, or how will anyone know exactly I'm stepping into your property? It's not that, we know there's a line drawn somewhere.
There's a grey area as well, isn't it? Because you could be photographing private property from a public place. So what is that? So I think the minute you start arguing about the law, you've kind of lost anyway, because you've got into an argument when all you wanted to do is take pictures. And even if you're right, what are you gonna do? Have a blazing row there and then, and not take any photographs, even if you're right. I don't know. I think it's better to try not to have these things than.
Of course, but I did get into a heated discussion with one of the security guards in Tower Bridge at one point, and he was really threatening me in terms of arresting me. And I said, look, you're not police. You can't arrest me. You can call the police. I will stand right here. I'll wait for the police. And then he just turned around and said that, okay, just don't continue photographing here. And then he walked away because he knew he couldn't do anything to me. And it's just a bit of nonsense there. And in fact, I just think it's a nuance. Why bother? You can talk to people nicely. Just like, okay, no commercial photography here or whatever. You don't have to be aggressive towards anyone who holding just a bigger camera. There's no need for that. But anyway, that's besides them. We're talking a bit street photography here. Why are we going to this discussion? I have no idea.
I don't know.
Okay, so I guess that everybody agrees that street photography is fun, but it can be challenging at times depending where you photograph. And so maybe it's time. Let's have a look at some photograph. I think to ease ourselves into the discussion here. So let me just see if I can get into this. Right, hang on a second. For some reason, my system is a little bit slow today. I have no idea why. Oh, there we go. Right. That's it. Okay, So while we're looking at some beautiful photos, I'm going to showcase here. Let's talk a little bit about how your approach in street photography, because we would like to hear from you as well. So let's bounce the conversation around again. So Rod, when you talked a little bit about sitting back, observing, and before you hit the shutter, and tell me like at which point you think you would want to waste those films or clicking the shutter button.
I don't know. I think photography is a very instinctive thing, isn't it? You know when the arrangement of things is right, don't you? You see when a moment happens and you can look at the scene and think there needs to be somebody there, or you see somebody who's got a particular look about them, or they make a striking shape.
Yeah.
And you just had to find a position whereby you can get against the background that you want. I mean, this is Cartier-Bresson, right? I think this days,
is Robert Dono, I think.
Is it? Oh, yes. My mistake. I beg your pardon. So I think these days, if I wanted this shot today, out of respect to those involved, I think I would set it up with models,
right?
Because you don't know who these people are. They might be married, but to other people, that could be awkward. So I think yes, there's this idea that you should ask permission. That's kind of all right. But even if you ask somebody permission to take their photograph, I think these days people are much more wary. They don't know whether it's going on YouTube. They don't know whether they're going to be made to look an idiot. They don't know why you're doing it. I think photographers' motives are treated with a lot more mistrust these days than they used to be. So I think back in the day when this was taken, having a photograph taken was remarkable, and the idea that it might one day appear in a magazine, that would be amazing. But I think today this would seem rather intrusive. Right. But I've got a notion that this was set up anyway, which is fine. It's still an amazing photograph.
I mean, I have no problem photographing stranger on the street, and I mean, obviously, I'm not the sneaky type. I'm not the jumpy type like Bruce Gilden is. He literally would just have a flash, jump in front of a face and do it.
That is just exploitation, isn't it? You find people who've got something a bit wrong with them, and then you exaggerate it, and it's just not a nice thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. So what I would normally do, I make myself very obvious that I'm taking photos, that they know that if I suddenly stand in front of them holding the camera up, they know that I'm photographing them. If they wave at me or just turn around, that I know that they don't want to be photographed. But quite very often that they actually don't mind, and they even give me a cheeky smile or something, and that's when I click the shutter. And so I'm quite happy with that. I'm just looking at one of the comments there, and JMT Photography Media, and actually say he got into fight in Las Vegas street for performer. That sounds serious. I hope there's no loss, financial loss anywhere there.
That's taking you out very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, like you said about these market traders, right? They can be quite aggressive. And
this Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. I just saw Robin say, and yes, we had our Chinese New Year just a couple of days ago. So he just saying Chinese New, Happy Chinese New Year, so that Lunar New Year. That's very good. Thank you, Robin, for saying that. And I wish everybody else the same thing too. Happy Lunar New Year. It's the year of dragon, apparently. So yeah, it may be a good year for everybody. So go out and shoot something amazing.
I think what's interesting about this photograph here is that the technical quality is very low, but we don't mind.
No. Well, this is something that is going to be consistent in a lot of the photographs that I'm going to show you through this presentation here, because that's another thing that I would like to discuss with all of you, because, these days, as a photographer, as digital photographer, we're accustomed to all kinds of technologies to ensure that you can track, you can get at the sharp shot. You have all this tracking, subject, human face and eye, lips detection, whatever you name it. You have everything. So you're more or less getting everything perfect. And in good scenarios. But if you look back at a lot of these older photographs, and you find that a lot of them are either have motion blur or they're out of focus, and but they are great photographs. So in your opinion, let's start with you, Rod. You know, is sharpness really that important for a photograph be great?
Well, we think it is until we see a shot we like that isn't particularly sharp, which I think probably 90% of the photojournalism shots from this classic era. They're simply not particularly sharp. And this one as well has got the one before, I'll just really mention it, had some fairly obvious dodging and burning around a couple.
Yep.
Just around the guy's head, just to kind of, it's pretty obvious that they've been lightened up a little, dark ground taken down a bit, the background taken down a bit. Today we would say that that's pretty shoddy masking, but the image still works. So I don't know. I think we've got rather obsessed with technical quality, and we've forgotten to actually look at a picture as a whole and see if it works. So
you know, like I mean, this particular shot, I mean, I always quite admire is whether it's staged or not, and I like the fact that the passersby, or none of them were paying notice to them at all, and then they're all like walking straight past, not looking at them. They're looking forward, and look like they are invisible. But they can look at the flip side is that they have the world to themselves. They don't even care about what other people think. You know, I think it's a very strong statement there, and it's quite a good kind of like a love story photograph, and often use that as an inspiration for my couple photography, because I think that is actually pretty good to mimic this sort of feel and emotions as well. And so it works a lot of the time with my couples, and then and as long as you don't mind kissing in public, and usually this is quite a good inspirations actually. So let's go to the next photograph here, and this is another cool things, and I think that we've seen modern versions of this quite often these days. People like taking photograph in the subway in New York City, or even underground in London. Especially during peak times, and you know, you have when the train's quite crowded. Sometimes you do have street performers in the tube or in NYC's subways, and you can literally recreate the same shot if you really want to, just a more modern versions of it. And so, do you think, you know, in this particular case here, because we talked a little bit about in private properties, because subways, train, these are private properties. So you think, you know, like we can still do the same thing these days without being told off, or anyone has tried something similar to this, and let me know your experience as well. So what do you think, Rod? Do you think, you know, it's okay to take photograph in a train when everybody's just sitting, you know, in a confined area in a supposedly private property?
Well, it's kind of, it's not a picture of them, is it? It's a picture of the performer, and if you've got the permission of the performer and cooperation of the performer, it doesn't seem to be, to me, to be a terrible thing, because you're not showing anyone in a bad light here. They're just spectators to the thing you're photographing. What I like about this image is I don't know what camera it was shot on, but you know, we've talked in the past about the way older lenses render images differently.
Yes.
This probably wasn't shot on a Leica, but that's got a Leica look, isn't it? The way the out of focus areas are rendered.
Yeah, especially the you know how it's cropped. You know, it's a 3x2. Whether it's cropped in post, you know, afterward, or from any size negatives, I don't know. So it's quite hard to tell. But it looks like it's using a relatively wide angle, and I guess you know, back in the time that I believe that this photograph was taken, you know, you don't have anything ultra fast or ultra fast speed films, so you have to use a very fast lens, like any sort of like 35 1.4 I believe is a 35mm film, and lens, I mean, and that means that this sort of depth of field definitely looks more like a 28-35 shoot wide open, and you can see a little bit of motion blur as well, so you can see the shutter speed is probably quite slow, 1/30 or something, and it's not very, very fast at all. But then it adds to the appeal, you know, like I guess a lot of things that we have in common these days, especially modern digital photography, is that we can push the ISO. because like, especially full frame cameras, we have like noise free, literally up to 12,800, which is unheard of back in those days. You can use a relatively fast shutter speed and use a fast lens. So that means you can catch things print sharp. But that's that really, really like good, you know, in a way that aesthetically, you know, I don't know. I actually prefer a little bit of a I wouldn't say blur, but a little bit of a live in the photograph when you kind of know that it's moving in a way. So like this photograph does give me that. Is, you know, the guy singing in the center of the frame there, and you know, all the other people there were just moving ever so slightly a little bit. You can know that the train's shaking a little bit. So he's trying to stand still to take this photograph. So it's certainly an interesting way of looking at a photo and trying to interpret you know, the vibe, you know, the what's going on there at the time. If we now take the same photograph today in any subway or underground tubes, you know, you would have taken a pin sharp shot with, you know, the subject in question will be popped out of the frame because it's so clinical that that focus will be dead on the guy's face, and so it's going to be very, very different. Plus, the shutter speed will be a lot higher, so you're freezing the frame altogether. So you lose that motion there, you lose that kind of energy, I guess, from this photograph. Now, just Rod, just to go back to what this camera, I think, actually shot a rangefinder. You know why I'm saying that? It's because it's a little bit of a parallax there. You can see they're slightly off center there. I'm pretty sure the guy's looking dead center, but when they click the shutter, it's slightly off. So I think it shot probably a Leica back in those days. And so would it be a Leica M3 or M2?
I think what I like about this is the transition between in focus and out of focus is very gentle.
Yeah,
you haven't got this kind of sharp unsharp thing.
Yeah,
it's kind of much softer transition. It's very hard to explain.
Yeah,
but I do like this shot. I think if it was, I don't know how it was done, but it'd be very tempting to, if you found a guy like this busking on the train, say, look, can I get some shots? I'm going to walk backwards up the aisle. You follow me. I'll get some shots. Is that all right?
Yeah.
And I think that would work well. Maybe that's what he did. I think that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, I mean, like, I'm not sure anyone who's listening or watching us right now will agree that if you do want to photograph a street performer, just give them some tips. You know, they're there to perform. You know, quite often they have they have contactless payment these days, especially in London. So they just tap your card, give them a couple of pounds or £5 or something. You know, they're very happy for you to photograph them, even tag them, because quite a few of these street performers have an Instagram, so they like to, you know, being tagged, you know, and to have a little bit of exposures there. So they're very happy to do it. I think it's a mutual benefit, right? You know, you want to photograph them, and must well make the most of it.
What I tend to do is if they're in the middle of performing, I try and catch their eye, show them the camera.
Yep.
And if they nod, I just go ahead and give them some money. And there have been times as well when I just put some money in, then taking some pictures. I had one guy come up to me afterwards and said, "Nobody ever does that, thank you."
Yeah,
which is quite nice. So yeah, you got to pay them there to make a living.
They do. And
you're making a living too. So
absolutely right. Here's another. This is right. How many of you know Vivian Maier? So this is a shot from Vivian Maier.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a very. He's been discovered very late in the game, and most of her work were hidden completely from public for many years. I think her work is interesting, more interesting in a sense that that, you know, she's taking photographs that is almost representing her lives, her journeys, you know, through those years that she's been on the street. She's not I wouldn't say a purpose built street photographer in a sense that she would go around looking for things to photograph. She is just carrying the camera herself, walking along the street that, you know, the same routes that she's been doing every single day, and just catching people she walks past. And that's interesting. I think to me, you know, that shows one thing. There's one thing that is very, very interesting for everybody here, is that you don't need to travel to an exotic locations or interesting location to photograph. Everything is happening right around your doorstep. So this is definitely something we should take note of, because especially a lot of new photographers, they always think that, oh, you see the Instagram from these people, oh wow, that location looks absolutely cool. I got to get there to take some photographs. But then again, grass is always greener on the other side, right, Rod? Like when you take some photograph, the other guys see your photo and say, oh wow, your photo looks cool.
We become blind to the things around us. Somebody like me could go to, I worked in Bath for many years, and I became blind to it. But you get tourists who come halfway around the world just to gawp at the architecture of Bath. But because I was there every day, I stopped seeing it. You do stop seeing the things around you, but the world is spectacular wherever you are. You've just got to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many of you actually agree, like there's so much happening around your doorstep? And because I always get questions, because my work is always around central city of London, so I photograph a lot in Big Ben areas, in Westminster, a lot in Tower Bridge areas, a lot in the city, and quite a lot of them always ask me, don't you run out of things to photograph? You're always in the same place. But I guess you can think of it that way, but at the same time, the light is different every single day. And then you have, because I'm photographing on the street, people are always different. So you always got different subject to photograph, and they may have a different outfit, they may have a different expression that would totally transform the photograph, even though I may have the same angle and same setting. And but this is the beauty of street photography, I guess. You never run out of options. I mean, you can look at Vivian Meyer's work, and you can see a lot of work is always around the same area, which is what we just talked about. She just photographs the same place again and again and again, but the subject is different. So that's what matters. It's the subject, right?
I think she shot with the Rolleiflex, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
So there's the thing with that shot. There's your typical waist level Rolleiflex angle, isn't it?
Yep.
That's what I miss. If you have the camera to your eye, people look different. But if you have the camera at your waist, they are different again. I mean, it's given this lady some real stature. Whereas if you were shot from head height, she'd just be an elderly lady the same size as you, with no particular character.
Yeah,
but I think it's a different angle.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think that what separates Vivian Maier from other street photographers is that she actually engaged with her subject. So, like, she often walked quite close, and like you said, shoot waist down, because she got a Rolleiflex, get it in focus, and then she's starting to talk to subjects. So then they can look back and have that engagement, that eyes and everything in contact. And before she clicked the shutter, and one beauty of Rolleiflexes is that their leaf shutters is extremely quiet, so it's very unobtrusive. As you know, for those who don't know what they are, because back in the analog days, we don't have silent mode, electronic shutter mode, what we have now, which is complete silence. So like any SLR, you have that clunky flap, mirror flap, you can hear it quite loudly, and so the only thing you want it to be discreet or very quiet is to use a leaf shutter cameras, or Leica is known for their very quiet cloth shutters. So it's very faint sound in that's why a lot of street photographers like to use that, simply because the quietness you can gain from it. But yeah, that's very interesting. And John Young said Vivian shots with many different cameras. She did, but majority of it was done in the Rolleiflexes. I know that she has Leicas towards the later stage, but I think majority of the work that she published as of when she was discovered are mostly shot from the Rolleiflexes. So you can see they're all square frames there. There's all 120 films. I think that she admitted that she loved Rolleiflexes, and in some of the documented conversations, apparently. So yeah, it's interesting to see how people think, back in the days when everyone's moving to 35 millimeters, and she was still using a rather large and heavy camera walking around the street. Has anyone used Rolleiflexes? I'd just like to hear from you as well, because I like them. I don't have a Rolleiflex, but I have an Icon Zeiss Icon, which is the same TSLR, not TSLR, TLR, and twin lens reflex cameras. They are quite fun to shoot with.
I love them. I wish I still had one. The hard thing to get used to is that the image is laterally reversed.
Yeah.
So if you want to change your framing, you have to train yourself to go the other way, because look at the picture. I think in the same way that I think a phone does. You take pictures with a phone. It becomes disconnected, and you're looking at an image, which is kind of better than looking at the scene, because you're, in a way, you're seeing the image as it will be reproduced.
I see.
I do quite like doing street photography with a phone for that reason. It helps me see stuff better than if I have a camera to my eye.
TL shot with the Rolleicord, so is Jeff, and also a Yashica T24G. That is
I had a
very
124G
good camera.
Yeah.
Yes, a very good camera. Very, very good camera. I had one, but the lens became moldy and I couldn't repair it. And which is a shame.
I had a Russian Lubitel 8 for a while, Lubitel 2 rather.
Oh, I had a
which I bought in the 1980s
I had one here.
For I think it's £8, and it worked, but it broke.
Hey,
after a couple
talking
of
about Lubitel, there you go. There you go. I have it right here.
Is that a lomography one or the original?
This is the lomography one. So it's actually a new camera, and it's not new.
They're
now.
not cheap, are they?
No, I pay almost £300 for this plastic thing.
I know. My Russian one was £8.
Yeah, but you know what? I shot with
they were hits the cameras.
I shot with this guy and quite a few times, and it's actually, the lens is actually pretty good. It's quite sharp, to be honest. I was a little bit shocked when I saw the developed photos. It's amazing sharp. Yes.
If it's the same lens that mine, I was surprised by that. Quite heavy vignetting, and I'm not sure the edges were particularly good, but incredibly contrasty, crisp little lens. I was quite impressed.
It is. So I now I got it out. I might actually go and shoot with this guy again, and I still got some 120 films in the fridge, so I might go and do that again.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So there's the next photograph, obviously about Berlin Wall, and so this is something slightly different now. Just change the tone a little bit, and this is more like journalism, really, more than street, and I guess. So, I mean, I know. Like, there's always this very blurred boundary. How do you classify a street photography? Like whether do you street portrait is part of it, and then you got like scenes like this part of it, and you got some like people walking through the shadow is part of it. But then you can classify this as a like photojournalism, because it's a historic moment. So I think it's actually the beauty of photography is that there's no right or wrong here. And if you're there at the right time in the right place, at the right place at the right time, then you capture something amazing like this one, then you just say, "Oh, wow, that's a moment."
I think you can say something about human nature as well. What I love about this is you've got this big gap in the wall that's been stood for decades, a momentous historic event, and the guy just to the right standing on the dumpster, he's just taking a picture of some graffiti. He's got a symbolic hole in the Berlin Wall, and it's like he doesn't care. He's just seen some graffiti.
Yep.
But I think I'd call it street photography, because you can if you're working for a paper or a news agency and it's your job and you take this, then I guess you could call it photojournalism. I think most of us walking along and seeing something like this, we'd call it street photography, because we shoot it because it says something and it's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of crossover. I think you're right.
Yeah, and also like when I'm pretty sure this is not the only shot. I'm pretty sure there are many other people. Even the guy, actually, you see the guy actually stood on top of the bin. He's photographing the wall. So like the thing is, like you only see those that are published, by the journalist and or some famous photographer who managed to publish a book. But there are also many other photographs that we never ever got a chance to see. And just go back a little bit about Vivian Maier. I'm pretty sure there are many other photographers similar to her that hasn't been discovered. And some are just pretty just a private guy. He's just not a claim to be a photographer himself or herself. They just don't want to be known, just keeping the work to him or herself. So there are a lot of these photographers around the world that, and I'm pretty sure there are a lot of hidden gems somewhere that we never ever seen. And so it would be interesting really to discover, hopefully in time, and when people, maybe their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, somehow going through the loft and find a bunch of negatives and start and scan them. So if you do find negatives, old negatives, scan them to see what they are, because you might be interested to see exactly what's been captured. You never know, right? And maybe you find a really old photograph of London, old photograph of Paris, old photograph of whatever, anything, and that could also be an historic piece as well. You just don't know where your great grandfather's been back in the days. And it's good to trace some footsteps.
It is, okay. And I think quite often, if you can go back to your early days as a photographer and what first motivated you, sometimes you can surprise yourself with what you shot.
Yep.
Sometimes there are times you look back and think, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. But other times you can look back and think, oh, I had something there.
Yeah.
Is this Elliot Erwitt?
That's Elliot. Yeah, that's Elliot. Yes. So this is an interesting shot once again, and we go back to a little bit of the technical side of it, and because if you shoot with today's camera, obviously you have animal tracking, animal recognition. Like this sort of shot would have been very easy to do these days, but imagine the day when he had to shoot everything manual, and that's not an easy task at all. And the angle that he was doing, there was no flip-up screen. He has to lie on the ground to do this.
The thing is, you say it's easy to do, but I think there's a difference between things that are technically easy and things that are easy to imagine, because you've got to have some kind of mind to see this photograph and know that it could work. It technically, that's how you achieve it is one thing, but actually understanding this would make a great photograph, that is completely separate to any kind of technical settings or camera choice or even lens choice. This is having a creative understanding rather than a technical one, or as well as. You need both.
And just before we move on, obviously, I want to ask everybody as well. And I'm pretty sure if you are into street photography, you must have some names in your head that you really admire their work. I would like to hear from you, like who do you like? Some past masters, and which one photographer really inspire you to go and do certain things. And I'd like to hear from your point of view as well, because as a photographer myself, and we're all into really passionate about photography. We would like to, in a way, share our interests and passions in the same area, and we'd like to talk a little bit about exchange informations with you guys as well, and that'll be really good. So Elliot has a lot of dog photos and the back and quite a few of them are actually quite funny, and I guess that was his humor side of it, and then he really enjoy capturing those moments, especially I think his choice of angle is quite interesting as well. He always go really low down for these dog shots, and he really want to see dogs in a dog's perspective, get to the same level as them, and so they can see exactly what a dog would see. So that's a very nice touch, I think. For those who are able to go down so I think you should try use a very wide angle lens and also go really low down and take some shots. You may be surprised exactly what you can achieve. But then again, you have to be very careful these days that exactly what you're photographing, because you may find yourself in trouble, especially in the summer days, and when there are a lot of ladies wearing short skirts and things like that. So people may not like that at all. So just be more wary of that. I certainly had some experiences, not deliberate, and because I saw some interesting angle that I'm trying to get a shot, and there was some lady walked past and asked me exactly why I'm doing low down and angle up, when I'm doing something really dodgy there. So no, I'm not exactly. I'm just trying to photograph the dog in a different angle. I showed her the photograph and said, "Oh wow, that's very nice photograph," and then she walked away. And but yeah, just be mindful that when you want to do that sort of thing, and especially in modern day photography, so you've got to be respectful to others as well, and not trying to click the shutter randomly. You may actually offend some people. Let's move on to the next shot. So go on then, Rod.
I was only going to say, I imagine that one was done with the help of the subject and the dog. This Possibly. One, I think this is probably kind of my approach to where I said I'm guessing he Cartier-Bresson thought, I'm going to stand here and wait for somebody to jump the puddle. If they don't, I'm going to ask somebody and then take the picture. But that's a case of choosing where the photograph is, then waiting for it to happen, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got some names come up already. Diane Arbus, yes, nice. And then we've got someone, so Alex Webb, yeah. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, you're quite right here. And in fact, people who heard about the story about this photograph is that Henri Cartier-Bresson actually going to this place many times before he actually took this photograph. He was studying the surrounding. He saw this puddle there, and then he watched people jumping. He found that, okay, maybe I can get a good photograph of that. And then he went back. I'm not exactly how many times he went back, but then apparently he went back there a few times. To choose the right timing, because some days there's not maybe too sunny, some days it maybe just not raining, maybe I don't know, either something happened. So like he chose the time that he wanted to shoot, and obviously with the puddle like this, when you see people jumping all over the place, and you can see that it's probably quite a frequent thing that people do there, just because that may only be the only routes they can cross. So people were just like trying to do that all the time. So he had a lot of opportunity to do that, but to find the right time, so you got to be patient. You got to be, know your framing, know when is the best time to do it. You can see that a little bit of haze at the back as well. That presumably that was shot probably pretty early in the morning, and it's still got a little bit of morning mist, or even maybe just smoke or smog, from the factories. So it's also the timing. So yeah,
I suspect actually that is some fairly heavy burning in of the sky. I mean, if that's what it is, and that's why we've got this kind of, the rooftops are dark but it's hazy below, my guess would be that's some pretty heavy darkroom work. Does that bother anyone? No. This interests me as well, because we work very hard these days to make our editing invisible. If I'm right, I don't know if I am. If I am right, and this is just some fairly heavy-handed burning in of the sky, I don't mind it. Yeah. But it seems pretty obvious to me. But I'm just wondering what everybody else thinks. You get Lightroom doing this really clever AI masking now, and kind of subject recognition and selection and masking, which is remarkably good. But I'm not sure that you actually need to be that sophisticated about your editing, because often it's more about the shapes and the balance and the contrast, and a little bit of clumsiness doesn't hurt it at all, in my opinion.
And I think, one interesting aspect about this particular photograph is that, in fact, many of Henri Cartier-Bresson's photograph is that the moving subject is always slightly blurred, but the rest of the surrounding is crystal clear. It's very sharp. So he managed to do that by using relatively slow shutter, but not slowing to the point it's completely blurred. You can still see the shape perfectly fine. It's just a little bit of motion blur there to signify the movement. And obviously this is a classic photo there. And just before the heel touched the water, I think that's a classic touch. And I really like that. It's hard to do. Back in the days, you don't have continuous shooting. And you had that one shot, obviously he might take a few frames and to get this one out, but besides the point, he can't take this subject continuously when he's jumping over. He only had that one moment to click it.
Well, also, if somebody does that, they're going to disturb that whole surface of the water, probably for a couple of minutes at the very least.
Yep.
You
Yep.
you can't. You're gonna have to wait a while before you can try that again. It's possible though.
Absolutely.
He just walked around, did
Yep.
loads of stuff like this, and this one worked. And there are 9 others for every one that worked that went in a bin. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, you can even see that
We
little
can't see the
ripple.
contact sheets. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And you can even see that little ripple on the little wooden ladder that guy stepped
yeah.
onto. You can so that's amazing. That's a little detail there that say that that's a one shot. That's a really really cool touch there. And so let's move on to the next one. And so we've got another. This is a very common shot these days. Many people trying to do the same thing, photographing people on the train and the tram on the bus. You see quite a lot of these photographs, and everywhere actually. A lot of street photographers tend to do that sort of thing. I've done a few myself, photographing people on the red bus in London. It's an interesting practice in a way, and especially you always see a lot of these tourists, and they like to wave at you. So sometimes they actually put some funny faces, and you can actually photograph them. I always like to have a little bit of fun with them as well, and it's quite easy to do. Every time you find a bus stopping, in a traffic light, and that's the spot you want to be standing and take some photograph like that. Obviously, you choose a moment. You want to choose something that might interest you, and but it's something that I'm pretty sure a lot of you have done it. Tell me you haven't done it. Have you done something like that, Rod?
It's interesting actually. It's never occurred to me to try and attract people's attention before doing it. I think that could work really well.
Yeah,
Actually, try
yeah,
and get people looking at you, so that then you've got such a mixture of expressions. I think it's quite cool. I guess though that what we have to remember is we look back at these pictures and think they're amazing,
yeah,
but probably at the time they weren't, because we're looking at a time decades ago, which is fascinating in itself for that reason.
yeah,
If you were alive at the time, this would have been terribly, terribly ordinary, and it
yeah.
wouldn't have that kind of historical interest. But
No.
I think what of all the pictures that you've shown us, I think there is a common thread with all of them. There's a kind of enigma about all of them, that they raise questions that leave
Mm.
you thinking and pondering. So I
Yep.
mean, if this shot, for example, you wonder about these people, where they're going, what kind of lives they have, and so on.
Yep.
With the guy jumping over the puddle, you're imagining the instant that his foot lands in the water. And I think all these classical photojournalistic images from this era had this sense of enigma, of unanswered questions,
Yep.
of something
Yep.
happening that you have to think about, because it's not at all obvious.
No.
Where's that person walking?
Yep. Yep.
Why is that
Absolutely
man
right.
just standing, staring into space? That kind of thing. It's this sense of enigma, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess this is why I like photography in general. Is that when I see someone else photographs, and I always try to understand and imagine what happened before, after. Like it's kind of
Yeah,
like you're reading a novel, and then you're reading these words, and you got these descriptive sentences and phrases. You're trying to imagine exactly what's in your mind, what's happening, and it's very different to movies. Moving pictures is very different altogether. But photographs, it's a still shot. It's one frame, and from that frame, you're starting to have this whole story coming out of it. Is it like this? Oh wow, that guy did that. May have done this, or it's kind of interesting.
you kind of don't want the whole story. You
No.
want to be left wondering, don't you?
Yep.
A photograph that tells you everything and encapsulates everything and leaves you with no questions at all.
Yep.
I think that's quite boring. But a
Yep.
photograph that leaves you thinking, oh, that's much more interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love this shot. This is it's always one of my
I know.
favorites here. And but the next
Do you
one,
think
I
that guy on
think,
the right is eating a hot dog?
yeah, yeah,
It doesn't
uh,
seem. It looks.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
Mark Hassler just talked about Fan Ho, and you're gonna love this. This is one of his one of his classic shots here. I actually went to this spot last October when I went back to Hong Kong. I went to this market. This is the Central Market in Hong Kong Island, and I went back there. And for those who may be curious, and they have recently reopened this market for public, and then but they have now converted the building into an indoor market now. And the light that you see in this particular photograph is actually something you cannot do anymore, because they have it's completely blocked by a high rise behind. So this shot simply cannot be taken again. Even if you have, mock up everything, have models and dressed up in the 60s, you can't do the same photograph again because you won't have the same light. But yeah, this is one of the classic shots there. And one thing I do like about Van Ho is how he used light and shadow. And the way he makes it is
this
just
is all about the light, isn't it?
It's all exactly. And somehow, because of like, this is not a depth of field shot. This is not a shallow depth of field shot. You can see this is probably shot in f8 or something. It's kind of really deep because you can see quite a few things in focus. And but at the same time, the people in the foreground, the guy holding the goods there, and the mother and the daughter, or the son, I actually can't quite see here, and is very 3D pop. It's almost like you're shooting with a 1.4 lens and they just pop out of the frame, but it isn't. It's a very different shot altogether. But that's the clever thing about Van Ho. Van Ho really knows how to use the light and shadow. The gradation of the light itself, that really makes the subject pop from the frame by using no shallow depth of field whatsoever. He still wanted texture. He still wants to have, these incredible details in the back to draw the frame. Yet somehow he managed to pop the subject out of the frame. It's just a really incredible work he does.
It's all about the light, isn't it? I think it's interesting as well that the light, to me, works very differently in black and white to color.
Yep.
Because I don't, in black and white, somehow you can get to use light in a much purer way, and sometimes you can get a particular shade of gray or a particular gradation of tone that's just beautiful to look at. It's nothing to do with color, and probably wouldn't work in color.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think in color, this will ruin the shot completely. And one interesting thing, if you notice as well, when he shot this, obviously this is, I'm pretty sure this is actually a street shot, so it's not a stage shot. And he was just there waiting. I'm pretty sure I saw 4 or 5 different frames of this particular shot here. So he was just taking his time and making sure that he captured the one he wants. But the interesting thing about the light is that see the ground is actually bounced off some of the light, so the subject that we talk about in the foreground is all been lit by the reflective light from the ground, and so that's interesting how he managed to do that and capture that in the show. So I don't doubt that there will be some dodging burning in post, and but it's still a very good executed photograph, and no matter how you look at it, because it's a very difficult task to do this in black and white and shooting at that sort of setting.
I think as well, it's another example of where you can see, I'm going to guess here that he could see where the photograph was going to be.
Yep.
And he just stayed there waiting for everything to fall into place.
Yes. It's funny because I tried to do the same shot like last October, and I can nowhere near that. But like I said, the lighting was completely different. It's all blocked up by now, and so I was just trying to capture some people walking up the stairs. It's a fun thing to do, because I remember this shot, so I was trying to do the same thing, but obviously it's very different altogether. You don't have the same feel when you don't have the same light, and but this is another thing about looking back all these old master shots. Never shy away from trying to replicate something, because that might give you inspiration for your next photograph. Because if you don't try it, you don't hone that techniques or that inspirations, and it's something that you should really all try, because that's why I like to look at photo books and different street photographers, so I can look at the style and I say that may work in certain things. And in fact, that helps me from doing my job as well. Sometimes if I see or feel that I see the same light or similar sort of situation, I will try and employ certain things that I have seen before into that photographs. And when that happens, you never know, some magic may happen, and your client say, wow, how could you manage to capture that shot? This is so amazing.
So I just seen a comment said Gigi Wildlife wants us to define street photography. We did have a go at this at the start, so I don't suppose we'll try and do it again. But it's just stuff that we see on the street. It could be all the street stuff in the street. it's just stuff that happens in the street. I don't know what else to say, really. Maybe somebody else has got a different idea of this. I think in the past, it was often associated with getting candid shots of people going about their business that were interesting. But I think these days it's a much broader thing of life on the street, light, architecture, shapes, just stuff happening.
Yep.
Everyone will define it differently, I think.
Yep. Absolutely. And but I always think, people should involve in street photography. And if you're just taking a city, a building in architecture, they're more like architectural shot of cityscapes, so they're not really quite street in a way. So like, but when you have some life, when you have some life in it, whether it's gonna even a person's feet, is still some lives in the photographs. But that's how I define it anyway. That's how I see street photography. Everybody can have their own say. There's no right or wrong, I don't think. So you may have your take on street photography.
Yeah, I think architecture, street photography, and travel photography, they merge, they overlap. You can't really draw a dividing line, draw a line in the sand and say this is one, this is the other. There's just too much overlap, I think.
It's interesting, right? Because if you're a Londoner, for instance, and you photograph someone on the street in China, that's a travel photography. But you can also classify as a street photography in China. Like, so it's just, like you said, it's quite blurred there. Depending where you're from, whether you're actually traveling and take that photograph, and that becomes a travel photograph. And so it's quite blurred the line. So it's I don't think there isn't a right terms or anything. But anything on the street, I guess. As I think Vermis just said that street photography is photography of streets. So this shot here, this shot is Bruce Gilden, and like we said earlier, he's a very aggressive street photographer, more like street portrait, but he's trying to shock people with the flash, and by going really up close and wide angle lens, and he often shot with his Leica and a 24mm lens, and just stop right down to f8, f16, and use a flash just to burst into the face and get a reaction, and that's his style. That's his thing. Let's have a little discussions about
Jimmy,
style.
Do you remember? Do you remember Dougie Wallace, or Doogie Wallace, however you prefer to pronounce it?
Yeah.
He was a bit of a mad Scotsman. I don't think he's still doing photographs, but for a while he got some attention in some magazines. He had the very same approach. I did a shoot with him for a feature in London, and it was just terrifying to be with. Because he'd just have a camera and a flash and just put it in people's faces, scare them half to death, then disappear into the crowd before they could react. And it's horrible. I hated it.
Yeah. I mean, like, but one thing I do like what Bruce Gilden said, and I really remember watching him talking about this. So people can disagree of this, but I think he has a point. Whether you like his style or not, that's his style. But what makes a style, and he actually defined it, if you keep doing the same thing again and again, that becomes your style. And that is true, because that's how you see, like whenever you see a photograph like this, you think, first thing you will think of, Bruce Gilden, that's him. Like if you don't have that signature in your style, and then people may not associate you with that. So to become famous and known as a photographer, whatever genre you're in, whether architectural, you got to find your niche in a way, and also exploit that niche by keep repeating that niche, and then that becoming your signature. I mean, a lot of people may think that, especially modern days now, you got to evolve, you got to move with the style, you got to move with the fashion to stay current for the style. But I think to a certain extent, yes, especially if you're commercial photographers, and but for a lot of people, I think that to stick with your own style is quite important to define you as a photographer. So then when people see that work, it's like, oh, I know who made that photograph. And similar to all these names that you mentioned, why you name those people? Because they have a signature. They have something that you can associate them with. Yeah. I think that's interesting, and that's very important as well.
It's really important. Yeah, you might even if you might want to evolve as a photographer, the danger is that you're only known for doing the one thing. Audiences are not very subtle. No. They're not interested in your personal journey. They're just interested in your particular characteristic style. And if you change your style, they'll lose interest and find somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, a bit like you guys, yeah? When I was shooting a lot of Michael 430 and suddenly I turned up with a ZF, you always say that, why? Just joking. Right. Okay, let's move on to the next photograph. And hope you guys are having fun at the moment. So this is Jane Brown. So Jane Brown is a very known photojournalist, and she's done some amazing work, some amazing portrait work of people, famous people more particular, and but also little you know that she loves using her 0-1 film cameras. And I'm not sure that you know. She was never named or being an ambassador as such, like many other famous photographers, Olympus back in the days. But she said in her interview she loved her 0-1. She loved her 0-1 so much that she got about 24 of them at home. And she tried other cameras, but she always went back to her 0-1 with the 50mm 1.4 and 35 2.8. She always go back to those lenses. And if you Google her name, trying to look for her photographs, the majority, I would say 99% of the photographs were shot with the 0-1, and which is kind of amazing. Not trying to do some brand recognitions here, but then I'm trying to brainwash you guys saying Olympus is good. And but yeah, you look up at her work. It's actually very interesting, and some of them are actually quite ingenious. And we talked a little bit about light, and some of her photographs are amazing, in terms of using light and shadow to sculpt a person's face. And I think she had the eye of for that particular reasons. I think that she managed to really utilize things was available in the surrounding to make the photograph work, because don't forget, she's a journalist as well. She doesn't have a studio. She doesn't use like artificial light as such. She just used whatever is available at the time and just to snap the photograph. So for a lot of people, that you can say that this is probably one of the single most important skill that any photographer should have, is the ability to read the light and to use the light to advantage. Because these days we're easy, like we can just bump the ISO up. We can't see anything. Oh, let's bump it up to 12,800. Let's bump it up to 25,600. Now we can see everything now. And then oh yeah, we can use a 0.95 lens. I mean, back in those days, like how often do you see people using 0.95 lens? It's very hard to focus. It's not an easy thing to do. And also film speed was extremely limited. How often do you see people like shooting with a 3200 film? Probably never. Black and white film, yeah, you can push a couple of stops, but then you start to lose detail. You become very high contrast, and so it's not something you may want to do, especially for portrait purposes. That means that she would have to use relatively slow shutter, use an ISO 800 film, and depending on what sort of focal length, what sort of distance you had. So it's a very challenging thing for any photographer. But at the same time, you think about it. If a photographer can do that back in the 60s and 80s, why can't you do it now? And that teaches a lesson, though, I think, for all photographers there, is that we can do whatever we want, especially with all the technology we have now. Yes, we have amazing high ISO capabilities. Yes, we have amazing recognition software algorithm now. We have amazing AF, amazing continuous burst rate, frame rate, whatever you name it. Anything we have in today's cameras. But that doesn't take away the fundamentals of any photographers, though. I think, the likes of Jane Brown, is a very classic example of a simple person with a simple camera can take amazing shots just with simple elements, light. That's it. I think that's cool. I think that is amazing.
Do you think, perhaps, Jimmy, that because we're looking at photographs taken with very simple cameras, simple by today's standards. I mean, once you put a film in, that's your ISO sorted out.
Yeah.
And that's the white balance. You forget about the white balance. All you've got is focus and exposure. You can't zoom because you're shooting with a zoom lens.
Yeah.
Do you think, in a way, this simplicity helped to make those cameras just transparent? So that all you saw when you were using them was the subject and where you had to stand and where the light was. Because today, we've probably got 1,000 things to think about on the camera. Whereas then, once you knew you had to focus, knew you had to focus and get the exposure right, the camera just became something you looked through, and the subject was everything.
Well, I certainly think so. And let me ask the audience as well. Like when you go out and photograph on a street or anywhere, do you take more than one lens? Do you use more like a zoom, for instance, primer zooms, or whether you have one or two lenses, or maybe you have three, four lenses? Obviously, there's no right or wrong answers here. But in my case, I always like to use a prime. And the reason I use a prime, especially in either 35 or 50, that's kind of my two most common focal lengths that I use in full frame terms, is because I know exactly how it frames in my head. So if I see something, if I use a 50, I know exactly where I should stand to get that frame. And it becomes a second nature. Like you said, transparent. The tool just there for me to hit the shutter and just capture that frame. And but when you are so trained to use that focal length, you know how to do it like almost by heart. You don't need to think about, oh, maybe I need to zoom back out a little bit, maybe I need to change a little bit. You just slowly know the depth of field, how it works, how it relates to the subject, and what's the distance. This is exactly, I think, what a lot of older masters seem to do. Like we just talked about Jane Bound here, but we also talk about Henri Cartier-Bresson. He loved his 35 and 50 as well, and so a lot of his shots done in those focal lengths because he just knows them. Many other photographers do the same thing. Bruce Gilden, 24 mil lens, so he knows how close he can get to those subjects. It's becoming so transparent that he doesn't even think. He just go and just snap that shot. He know exactly where he needs to stand. He know exactly when to click the shutter. He know exactly, all he needs to do is to read the light and just, angle himself to get the composition right. But other than that, the camera almost doesn't even exist in his brain. He just there to, blink his eyes and he's captured.
So I always think that decisions mean distractions. So that if I'm using a modern camera, I mean, much of the time I'm reviewing a camera, so that's a distraction because you have to test out different facets of its operation. But even if I'm not, if I've got a zoom lens, suddenly I've got a decision. Do I get closer and wider? Do I move further back? And then what lens aperture do I use? I mean, it's nice to have a choice, but if you've got a choice, then you've got another decision. Yeah. And then you think, oh, am I in the right AF mode? Should I be on wide AF, or should I be on eye detect, or should I be center point AF? Do I need to shrink or magnify my AF point size? It becomes ridiculous. So that all you're doing is operating a machine, and occasionally you're looking up at the thing you're photographing. Yeah, it's kind of like getting everything backwards.
That also comes with experience as well. I mean, I have to say, and just to give you a brief example, I took many wedding photographs before, and then also I was also a guest in many weddings, and so like I often see some young photographers who doing weddings and. Not trying to be critical about their work, and I'm pretty sure they take amazing photographs, but then at the same time I notice a lot of times they took a lot of time in messing around with the settings in the cameras when they're missing the actual moment, because I guess that's the distractions in digital photography these days, that you have a lot of settings that you need to master, but at the same time I can say the same thing to many photographers, that if you know your cameras, if you know the moment, if you know how wedding works, for instance, the procedures and the timing, then you should have your camera set up for that particular moment in advance. You're not going to mess it up when you're trying to, when the moment comes, basically. So because you don't want to miss that moment, so you need to have everything ready and take that shot. So this is very critical, but that also comes with experience. If you don't have experience with wedding, you simply don't know the procedure, you don't know the timing, when it's going to do this and that, so you may actually miss that because you thought you may have to change the setting for whatever. And but when you experience, then different story altogether, and you know, oh yeah, I know next time is going to be the first kiss very soon. It's going to happen in the next 15-20 seconds. I'm going to get myself ready, focal length setting all done. And so yeah, I mean, experience definitely helps. And but ultimately, I think that you got to know your cameras if you when you sort of doing these sort of critical moment things, and on the street as well. On the street, you don't want to miss a moment. That's one of the main slogan, right? You know, capture the moment, freeze the moment, whatever. You know, in street photography's term, you're always trying to capture that moment. And so if what you don't want is that you are trying to get the right settings at the wrong time, you know, because then if you're looking at something, you think, oh, something's happening now, and you're trying to get the right setting, and then by the time you hold the camera up to your eye level, is it boom, it's gone, because that moment just gone. You don't want to do that.
I mean, this shot you've put on the screen here, I don't know who took that, but
this is
Henri
Cartier-Bresson.
Timing. I don't know how many shots he took to get, you know, like a handful of really successful ones, but here the expressions are just sublime, aren't they? They are everything. The expression on the guy's face at the back, he looks to these girls, the expressions on their faces. I think you could probably pose it. Maybe if the girls for us to stand there and wave people to walk past. I don't think that matters very much. I think the point to me though is that there's no time for focusing. There's no time for anything.
No.
You need the shutter to trip when you press the button. So I think in something I experiment with my XT1 is I just have it on manual focus.
Yeah.
And there's a button on the back. You can press a button, it'll focus, but it's still in manual focus.
Yeah.
But it just focuses once and it stays there. You don't have to keep doing it. So then, as soon as you press the button, you take a picture. I'd almost forgotten what that was like, because we've got so accustomed to this kind of half press, wait, full press, that I think we lose a lot of spontaneity. And especially in street photography, that's when you miss a shot like this one.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably why a lot of people, when we first asked about what camera you use, and quite a few of you actually like the GR, because GR, like we said, they had the snap mode, which is the zone focus, so you can preset a certain distance to be in focus, and when your subject walked into that zone, you just click the shutter without having to hesitate. You know, you don't have to wait for the system to focus. Nothing, you just click it, and then you don't have to use a snap mode. You can just simply use in manual focus, stop down the lens, and just a hyper focus the distance, and you can achieve the same thing without having to think. And that way you can always capture moments like this without having to think too much, providing you have the shutter speed. And so that's the only key there. But this is an interesting shot as well. I mean, I think that this is actually a crop, I believe, and you can kind of see that the framing is quite tight, and also it's a very awkward 4x3, and I'm pretty sure only Cartier-Bressons are mostly shot with a 35mm, which is 3x2, so pretty sure it's been cropped out a little bit, and so we don't know what's surrounding as well, but obviously he sees something in this frame here, so he just crop this bit out here and to represent his vision, or maybe his message in this particular photograph.
And I can't tell at this magnification, but I've got a sense that those girls aren't sharp.
No, it's actually blur. It's actually blur. Yeah.
And the thing is,
sorry.
Does it actually matter? So I think today, if somebody took that today, it would be ripped to pieces for not being sharp. But does it actually matter? I mean, it matters a bit. But I'd rather have the photograph like this than not have the photograph.
A split spontaneous moment that I captured them. Somehow that she smiled randomly, but that smile was the very different smile compared to the rest of the series that I took of her. And it worked. And that, even though that was actually blur, but she actually said to me that was her favorite photograph, because it just sees her happiness in that photograph. So that is, sometimes it's more about the expression, about the context in the photograph than actual the sharpness, the substance that modern photography are so rave about these days.
I think part of the issue is perhaps that these days there's a tendency to put the technical quality first and the pictorial quality second.
Yeah.
When really it should be the other way around. And worse than that, sometimes if the technical quality doesn't reach a particular standard, people just want to discard the shot.
Yeah.
And it seems such a loss, such a shame.
Okay, I think that's probably the last photograph that I saw. Then let's show you one of mine. That's the low angle shot I told you guys about. You might have seen this.
Yeah.
So let's use this as the last shot here, and so I guess we can kind of summarize it, today's discussions, and so I can see that all of you are very energetic, animated, and discussing about this. I'm pretty happy to see that you're all very interested in street photography, because I think the street photography is actually very good outlet for a lot of photographers, because there's no right or wrong. There is no particular I would say limitations and restrictions as such. You can just do it anywhere. You don't need a specific location. So you can photograph just down the road from you, even just like under your apartments, or just around the corner from your house, anywhere really. As long as you see the light, as long as you see some moments. Even a bus stop can be very fun, and so you can do anything with it. So I guess that's why we all have in common, because I'm pretty certain many of you will, one way or the other, will have done something on the street. So it's a very good way to practice your skills, test your new lens, your new cameras, and it's actually a very fun place to be. And like we discussed already, things can happen so randomly and also very different. Even if you go to the same place at the same time every single day, you'll get a different picture. So that's the beauty of street photography, and you would never get bored of it. And for me, sometimes if I'm feeling really bored at home, I just simply take a camera out with a lens and just walk around the city for a couple of hours, and I may not get any shots, but if I but sometimes it's just kind of fun just to, like Rod said earlier, observe, just to see things and just to feel it. If you manage to get one or two shots, that's great, and but another thing I want to ask you, Rod, is because a lot of photographers ask me, and so every time you go out, should I be aiming for a photograph, to be taken home as a prize? And do you think you need to do that, or you just go with the flow when when it happens, it happens? Don't kind of force yourself into getting that photograph.
Well, I think there are two ways to approach photography. And I think it's like a state of mind. I know photographers who construct photographs. They know what they want to photograph, and they construct the scene, the props, the model, everything. They arrange a photograph according to what they've planned.
Yeah.
And there are photographers photographers who just enjoy discovery. Yep. So they don't plan anything. They just react to what they see. And I think most of us are a mixture of those two. So I think if you construct photographs, that's fine. You might have a specific job or a specific brief or a specific idea you want to explore. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you are kind of limited by your own imagination.
Yeah.
I think what happens when you go out to do street photography is things appear in front of you wouldn't have imagined.
Yeah.
So there's that element of discovery, and you see things that work that you couldn't have predicted. So I think, they say in photography that it's only limited by your imagination. Well, your imagination can be a bit of a limit. Sometimes you need stuff to happen in front of you that you just see and react to.
Yeah.
You can't construct every photograph. It'd be very boring if you did.
Yeah, but I guess like I say, we're supposed to have photography, as a passion. You shouldn't think of it as a chore or something that you have to do. If you love photography, you don't necessarily need to have a photograph every single time you go out. It's just a joy of taking photograph. And but obviously, if you see something special, then you try to do it. But it's not something that will happen every single day. I'm pretty certain, like Auntie Gaston, like all the other masters that we just talked about, and they will have a photograph every single day. I'm pretty certain. No, they will have a camera. They will have taken many frames, but not every frame they will say that is a cool frame. It's only a limited number of amounts of frames that they will think that's worthwhile printing.
Oh yeah, for sure. You only see the good ones. But I think this is another interesting one to finish on, this is like a stage waiting for actors. And I think it's an interesting approach to street photography. That is a fabulous backdrop. You just need the right subjects to appear to make the picture. I think that's an interesting way to approach street photography. You can't go chasing after something once you see it, because you'll be in the wrong place. You look an idiot, and people will think you're chasing them. You've got to find where you want to be, and wait for the things you want in your picture to appear, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be my tip.
I guess to wrap this up, let me just move back to our screen, our lovely faces here, and yeah, I guess to sum it up is that I guess the best street camera is yourself, and I mean, is you are the vision, you are the one who are executing the photograph, you are the one who's seeing what's happening in front of you, you are the one who capture it. The camera, whatever you use, is a tool. It's an extension to your vision. And, you know, there's no right or wrong here. Obviously, there are tools that you feel you're more connected with, perhaps, you know, and that you like to use more. And all the cameras that you all mentioned in this chat room today, you know, like the GR series, the OM5, the EM5, the X100, the X Pro, the Leica M, whatever, anything that you mentioned in this chat room here today, they're all great cameras. You know, I think that we spent the last few months talked a lot about gears, and then we often say that, you know, oh yeah, we got the latest, you know, like even the latest, you know, the OM1 Mark II. Yeah, I mean they are stated to be the latest and the greatest. You know, like the ZF or the Z9, the ZA. All these are brilliant cameras there, but ultimately, you know, like, what do you need to capture a good street photograph? You know, what do you need to capture a good photograph in any genre? Is the timing, the lighting, the subject, you know, the execution, the lighting, the composition, everything I just mentioned there. Does any word that's relating to any capabilities of the camera? So I'll leave that to you to think about.
Yeah, I think for me, it'd be either my phone or my EP7, possibly with the 17mm f1.8.
Yep.
A camera for me that does so little that all my attention is on what's happening in front of it. Because the more time I'm looking at the camera, the more stuff I'm going to miss. And the harder it's going to be for me to react to stuff that interests me.
Yeah.
So just a simple camera that is not going to distract me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for simple fact that, you know, I know we all love to play with subject recognitions and everything. They're really fun to play around with. But they only work in my eyes. They only work in very isolated cases. And you know, for instance, I mean, if there are a group of people in front of you, and those subject recognition things just won't work. You know, if you have a group of animals in front of you, those recognition won't work. And I know you can select individuals in these days and do all kinds of things, but then again, it's another step for you to make before you take that photograph. You need to adjust it. But what you want is to have full control in your photography by means of the, you know, clicking the shutter but selecting the subject. You know, you don't want any interruption in between. You know, you don't want to have faff around another 2 different layers of menus and buttons and steps before you actually taking the photograph. You want to be ready and take that shot almost immediately. And I mean, like I said, you know, all about timing, right? You want that moment, then you got to have the right timing. And by having extra steps, would means that you may potentially miss that timing. I know we have Pro Capture, we have all the other stuff now, but, you know, that besides the point. You know what I mean, yeah? And it's not easy, but it's easy if you start thinking about in a more simplistic way in photography.
Yeah, I do feel quite strongly about focusing with street photography for that reason. I think anything that introduces uncertainty or delay undermines the whole thing. And I think we can get too fixated on focusing. If it's much harder these days to use zone focusing than it used to be, because lenses don't have precise and accurate distance scales with depth of field markers. You have to try and figure it out beforehand. But I think for street photography, if you can eliminate focusing from the things you're concerned with, you're going to get better photographs. And I think either use wide area AF, which is just going to focus on the thing closest to the camera, probably going to be all right, or just try and zone focus and not worry about focusing at all, and be like Cartier-Bresson, where not everything is sharp, but nobody cares because you've got a great picture.
Yeah, I think so. So that's good. And yeah, thank you very much for you guys for joining us today. And it's been a very, very fun and entertaining chat today. And I can see all of you.
I want to go out and take some pictures now.
Good. Take the camera out. I'm going to take my loop. I'm going to take my Losum film and then my Lubito again. I'm going to take some shot with this guy. Hopefully I can share some photograph with you guys in the near future. And these days, taking films is a very slow process, you know, and I don't develop my own film anymore. I have to send it off, wait for it to come back, and I might have to scan them and everything like that. So it's not an instant thing that we like, as you know, we're all having a little bit of a short patient time. I mean, like a focus these days, and we want things like instant. So unfortunately, it doesn't happen in analog.
I used to develop my own 35mm with those kind of ratcheted film holders, but 120 film, that's a lot tougher to manage because it crinkles. It's much harder to load into those spirals. So I gave up with that.
Absolutely. But anyway, good to see you guys, and please do come back and next week we're gonna maybe talk a little bit about other subjects as well. And in photography, let us know in the comment section below, and after this chat, what you guys would like to hear about or discuss about in the future, in terms of photography or gear or whatever you think, in the world of camera and photography, because we are very happy to discuss anything. And obviously, if it's something that interests us, it will be like today, it will be quite animated, so that's really good as well. Or any specific photographer you'd like to explore maybe a little bit more deeper, then maybe we can dig some of those photographs and we can discuss like what we do today, and so we can all have a bit of a discussion and have bit of fun kind of coffee time together and looking at photographs together. I think that's more appropriate. So thanks guys for joining us, and remember to subscribe and to this podcast, and stay tuned for other videos that we're going to be posting every week, and we're going to be live here every Wednesday, unless there's some special things happening, either through illness or something. We usually are here. And but other than that, we're very happy to be here to talk to you guys. So until next time, I'll see you all very soon. Bye for now. Cheers.